They laughed behind my back. They called me weak, an obsolete shadow. They thought power, mistresses, and penthouse dinners could crush me. Wrong. I didn't scream, didn't slam tables, didn't fight back loudly. I built a legal trap, buried deep within the very contracts they flaunted in my face. And when it collapsed, her entire $92 million power lobby turned to ash. They forgot one thing about engineers. We don't break things with hammers. We dismantle them with precision. One line of code at a time. My name is Lena Wyatt, and at 34, I'd spent 12 years climbing the ladder at Grayson Dynamics to become their chief security systems engineer. 12 years of late nights, missed birthdays, and sacrificed weekends. 12 years that meant nothing in that boardroom at 3:45 p.m. on a Tuesday that would change everything. The executive conference room on the 42nd floor always felt like a glass cage suspended above Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows, Italian marble table, leather chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I sat in my usual spot, 3 seats down from Marcus Hale, our CEO, watching the city blur beneath us while waiting for the quarterly security review to begin. That's when she walked in. Evelyn Sharp, officially. She was a strategic consultant for government relations, unofficially. Everyone knew she warmed Marcus's bed and whispered in his ear during golf games at the country club. She moved through the room like she owned it, her Louboutins clicking against the floor in a rhythm that screamed authority. Designer suit, perfect blowout, diamond earrings that caught the afternoon light. Everything about her was calculated to intimidate. "Before we begin," Marcus said, his voice carrying that false warmth he'd perfected over 20 years of corporate climbing, "Evelyn has some observations about our technical departments." My stomach tightened. This wasn't on the agenda. Evelyn stood, her manicured fingers resting on the table. She looked directly at me, and I saw it then, the predator sizing up prey. "I've been reviewing our organizational structure," she began, her voice silk wrapped around steel. "And I have concerns about leadership capabilities in certain areas." She paused, letting the words hang. "Technical competence is valuable, of course, but there are those who are brilliant with systems yet lack the essential qualities for true leadership. A team led by such individuals will always remain weak." The word hung in the air like poison gas. Every head in the room turned toward me. Not obviously, not directly, but those subtle glances that corporate veterans perfect, the kind that say, "We all know who she's talking about." Marcus's lips curved into that thin smile he wore when blood was in the water. "Interesting perspective. Evelyn, we should definitely explore organizational optimization." Organizational optimization. Corporate speak for someone's getting axed. My hands remained steady on the table, but inside, something cold and sharp was forming. I'd seen this dance before. The mistress marking territory, establishing dominance, removing threats, but I wasn't a threat to her. I was just the engineer who kept their system secure, who prevented breaches that would cost millions. I was infrastructure, background noise. "Perhaps," Evelyn continued, now addressing the room but keeping her eyes on me, "we need leaders who understand the bigger picture, not just the technical minutiae, but the strategic landscape, the political dimensions." Translation: "Not you, never you." The CFO nodded. The VP of Sales murmured agreement. Even my supposed ally, the CTO, remained silent, studying his phone like it contained the secrets of the universe. I could have defended myself, could have mentioned the 17 critical vulnerabilities I'd patched in the last quarter alone, could have brought up the federal compliance standards I'd gotten us through when everyone said it was impossible. But I didn't, because I understood something in that moment, watching Evelyn's perfectly painted lips curve in satisfaction. This wasn't about my performance. This was about power, and in their eyes, I had none. The meeting continued for another hour. Quarterly projections, budget allocations, strategic initiatives. I sat there, taking notes, participating when asked, playing the good soldier, but I wasn't really there anymore. I was already thinking 3 moves ahead, The way you do when you're debugging complex code. You don't just fix the error, you trace it back to its source. When the meeting ended, I gathered my laptop and headed for the elevator. Behind me, I heard Evelyn's laugh, bright and sharp, mixing with Marcus's deeper chuckle. The sound followed me down 42 floors. The parking garage was a concrete cave, all shadows and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sick. I sat in my Tesla, engine off, staring at the wall in front of me. Someone had spray-painted "Dream Big" on it months ago, and facilities had only managed to remove half of it. Now it just said "DR Big," like some cosmic joke. Weak, the word echoed in my skull. After everything I'd built, everything I'd protected, I was reduced to one word by a woman who probably couldn't write a single line of code. But here's what Evelyn Sharp didn't understand about engineers, especially women engineers who'd survived in tech for over a decade. We're used to being underestimated. We're used to being called weak, soft, not leadership material. We smile, we nod, we take notes, and then we go home and build things that reshape the world. I started my car, the electric engine purring to life silently. As I pulled out of the garage into the New York twilight, I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not yet. I was thinking about systems, about vulnerabilities, about how every fortress, no matter how powerful it seems, is only as strong as its weakest line of code. And I knew every line of code in Grayson Dynamics' empire. The revelation came 3 weeks later, buried in a compliance report that nobody else would bother reading at 11:30 p.m. on a Friday. I was alone in my office, the only light coming from my monitors, when I found the first thread. Evelyn Sharp wasn't just Marcus's mistress or a simple consultant. She was the architect behind a $92 million lobbying fund, a massive operation designed to secure Grayson Dynamics, the exclusive contract for providing AI infrastructure to the Department of Defense, the kind of contract that would transform us from a successful tech company into an untouchable giant. The deeper I dug, the clearer the picture became. Shell companies layered upon shell companies, all leading back to a single nexus, Evelyn's firm, Strategic Solutions, LLC. She'd been working this angle for 2 years, cultivating relationships with senators, Pentagon officials, policymakers. Every dinner, every golf game, every charity gala had been a carefully orchestrated move toward this moment. But there was something else, something that made my blood run cold. In the technical requirements section, I found multiple instances where critical security validations had been marked as pending review, or to be addressed post-contract. These weren't minor oversights. These were fundamental vulnerabilities that could expose not just our systems, but potentially national defense infrastructure. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Cocktail reception tomorrow night, Worthington Hotel. Your attendance is expected." Expected, not requested. The language of power. The Worthington's rooftop bar was everything you'd expect from a place where deals worth millions were sealed over aged whiskey, glass and chrome, views of the Empire State Building, bartenders who remembered your name and drink after one visit. I arrived at 8:15 p.m., wearing the one designer dress I owned, feeling like an imposter among the suits and evening gowns. Evelyn found me by the bar, appearing at my elbow like smoke. Up close, she was even more perfectly assembled. Not a hair out of place. Makeup that looked effortless, but probably took an hour. Perfume that whispered rather than shouted. "Lena," she said, my name sounding like an accusation. "So glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," I lied, accepting a glass of champagne I didn't want. She steered me toward the terrace, away from the crowd. The city spread below us, millions of lights creating constellations of ambition and desperation. "You know," she began, swirling her martini, "I've been watching you. You're brilliant at what you do, really. The way you handle system architecture? Impressive." I waited. There was always a but coming. But there it was. "You need to understand how things really work here. This isn't Silicon Valley where the best code wins. This is New York, This is federal contracting. This is about relationships, influence, understanding the unspoken rules. She moved closer, close enough that I could see the calculation in her eyes. People like you, she continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. You keep the company running. You're essential. But the big decisions, the ones that matter, they're not made in server rooms or security audits. They're made in rooms you'll never be invited to, by people who speak a language you'll never learn. She touched my arm, her nails perfect red daggers against my skin. Accept it, Lena. Play your role. Keep the system secure. Make your salary. Get your stock options. But don't confuse competence with power. They're not the same thing. The threat was elegant, wrapped in concern, delivered with a smile, but I heard it clearly. Stay in your lane, or be crushed. I understand, I said, meeting her eyes, and I did understand. More than she could possibly know. Good, she patted my arm like I was a well-trained pet. Oh, and about those security validations you've been flagging? Marcus and I have discussed it. We're moving forward as is. The Pentagon wants speed, not perfection. Sometimes you have to know when good enough is good enough. She left me on the terrace, disappearing back into the party where laughter sparkled like champagne bubbles. I stood there, looking out at the city, processing what I'd just learned. They were willing to compromise national security for a contract. They were willing to bypass every protocol I'd spent years establishing, and they expected me to sit quietly and watch it happen. But here's what Evelyn didn't know. Every system she was using to build her power structure ran through infrastructure I had designed. Every communication, every document, every digital handshake passed through security protocols I had written. She thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was wrong. I was playing a different game entirely. One where the rules were written in code, where logic trumped influence, and where a single overlooked clause in a contract could bring down an empire. I finished my champagne, left the glass on the railing, and walked back through the party. I smiled at the right people, made small talk about the weather, played the part of the harmless engineer. But in my mind, I was already writing code. Not the kind that protects systems, but the kind that exposes them. Evelyn thought she'd put me in my place. In reality, she'd just shown me exactly where to strike. The discovery happened at 2:23 a.m. on a Wednesday, in the legal archives that nobody had touched in 3 years. I wasn't supposed to be there, technically, but being chief security systems engineer meant I had access to everything, and insomnia had become my closest friend since the cocktail party. I was reviewing the original infrastructure contracts, looking for leverage, when I found it, buried in subsection 7, paragraph 4, clause B. The language was dry, legal, easy to overlook. All core algorithmic intellectual property remains under sole ownership of the original authors. No deployment, commercialization, or transfer of said algorithms may occur without explicit written consent and signature from the recognized authors. This clause supersedes all employment agreements and cannot be nullified without mutual written agreement. I read it 3 times, my heart rate increasing with each pass. Then I pulled up the development logs from 4 years ago. There it was. Commit after commit, thousands of lines of code, all tagged with my digital signature. The entire AI infrastructure that Grayson Dynamics was about to sell to the government. The revolutionary predictive algorithms, the neural network architecture, the security protocols. I had written 93% of it. The timestamp showed I'd filed the patent applications at 11:58 p.m. on December 31st, 3 years ago, New Year's Eve. While everyone else was celebrating, I was documenting my work. The company had approved it, even encouraged it, thinking it would strengthen their IP portfolio. They never imagined the author would retain personal rights. I cross-referenced with the employment contracts. Standard work-for-hire clauses, yes, but Clause 7.4b preceded them all. It was part of the original founding documents when Grayson Dynamics was just 5 people in a Brooklyn warehouse. Back when they desperately needed talented engineers and would agree to anything to get them. Back when Marcus Hale was just another startup CEO begging for talent. They'd never updated it, in all the acquisitions, restructuring, and legal reviews. This one clause had survived like a dormant virus in the code. I pulled up the $92 million contract proposal. Every single page referenced Grayson Dynamics' proprietary AI technology, every demonstration they'd scheduled, every capability they'd promised. It all ran on my algorithms that, legally, they couldn't use without my signature. The beautiful irony? The legal team had probably skimmed right past Clause 7.4b. It was technical jargon to them, engineering speak that didn't seem to matter compared to the big-picture negotiations, and Evelyn, for all her strategic brilliance, wouldn't know an algorithm from an algebra equation. I spent the next 6 hours building my evidence cache. Screenshots, contracts, patents, timestamps, email chains where Marcus himself had praised my groundbreaking algorithmic work. I encrypted everything, stored it in 3 separate secure locations, including one physical drive in a safety deposit box downtown. Then I did something crucial. I embedded a small, legal notification in the code itself, not malware, nothing that would damage or alter functionality, just a simple authentication requirement that would trigger if anyone tried to deploy the system at scale. It would display a single message: author signature required per clause 7.4b, system locked pending authorization from Lena Wyatt. Clean, legal, undetectable until the moment of deployment. The next morning, I walked into the office at 7:45 a.m., as usual. I grabbed coffee from the kitchen, sat through the 9 a.m. stand-up meeting, reviewed security protocols with my team. Everything normal, everything routine. But I also started documenting everything differently. Every meeting where Evelyn pushed to bypass security measures, every email where Marcus approved shortcuts, every instance where they ignored my warnings about vulnerabilities. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was building a legal fortress. The head of legal, Harrison Brooks, stopped by my office that afternoon. Old-school lawyer. The kind who still wore suspenders and kept physical law books on his shelves. "Lena," he said, settling his considerable frame into my guest chair, "I'm updating our IP documentation for the federal contract. Need you to sign off on the technical specifications." I reviewed the document carefully, noting how it claimed complete company ownership of all algorithms. "Harrison, has anyone reviewed the original infrastructure contracts recently?" He waved dismissively. "Standard work for hire. Everything created by employees belongs to the company. Even with pre-existing superseding clauses?" He paused, his legal instincts flickering to life. "What superseding clauses?" "Oh, probably nothing," I said, signing the parts that were accurate and leaving unsigned the sections that claimed company ownership of my algorithms. "Just something I noticed in some old paperwork. Subsection 7, I think?" I watched him make a mental note, knowing he'd look it up later, but by then, it would be too late. The seeds were already planted, growing in the dark like mushrooms, waiting for the perfect moment to burst through the corporate foundation. That night, I backed up everything one more time. Then I sat in my apartment, looking out at the city lights, and thought about what Evelyn had said. Don't confuse competence with power. She was right about one thing. Competence alone wasn't power. But competence combined with legal ownership of the very thing they were trying to sell? That wasn't just power. That was checkmate. My resignation letter was 2 sentences long. Effective immediately. I am resigning from my position as Chief Security Systems Engineer at Grayson Dynamics. Thank you for the opportunities provided during my tenure. I printed it at 6:45 a.m. on a Thursday, signed it with the same pen I'd used to sign my first contract 12 years ago, and placed it on Marcus's desk before anyone else arrived. No explanations, no transition plan, no 2 weeks' notice, just 2 sentences that would echo louder than any dramatic exit speech. By 8 a.m., my desk was clear. 12 years condensed into a single cardboard box. A photo from the first product launch, my favorite coffee mug, a stress ball shaped like a server. I left my access badges on the desk, shut down my workstation for the last time, and walked out carrying only my personal laptop and that pathetic box. Security tried to stop me. "Ma'am, We need to conduct an exit interview. HR needs to. Everything company related is on my desk, I said, never breaking stride. My personal items have been verified. Have a good day. The elevator ride down felt like descending from orbit, each floor marking another layer of corporate atmosphere I was leaving behind. When the doors opened to the lobby, I didn't look back. My phone started buzzing before I reached my car. Marcus, HR, the CTO, even Harrison from legal. I let them all go to voicemail. The only text I responded to was from Amy, one of my junior engineers. Please tell me this isn't real. Take care of the team, I wrote back, nothing more. By noon, the internal company Slack was in chaos. I still had access for another hour before it remembered to revoke it, and I watched the speculation unfold like a digital wildfire. Theories ranged from me having a breakdown to accepting a position at a competitor. Nobody guessed the truth. Then came Evelyn's message to the executive channel. Expected. Some people simply can't handle the pressure of evolution, will promote internally and move forward stronger. Marcus added, Lena's departure, while sudden, won't impact our federal contract timeline. We have redundancy in all critical positions. Redundancy. I almost laughed. The calls kept coming. By 3 p.m., I had 47 missed calls and 93 unread messages. I turned off my phone, made myself a cup of tea, and sat in my apartment's silence. For the first time in 12 years, I had nothing scheduled, no meetings, no deployments, no emergencies, just silence and possibility. That evening, I opened my personal laptop and checked the authentication system I'd embedded. Everything was functioning perfectly. Invisible. Waiting. A digital time bomb that wasn't designed to destroy, just to reveal, to show them exactly what they'd dismissed as weak. 3 days passed, then a week. The calls stopped. The texts dwindled. Grayson Dynamics moved on. Or at least appeared to. Evelyn probably celebrated, seeing my departure as the removal of an obstacle. Marcus likely already forgot I existed, focused on the federal contract presentations coming up. On day 10, Amy texted me privately. They brought in 3 contractors to cover your work. They're struggling with the code base. Nobody understands the core architecture. I didn't respond, but I smiled. Of course they were struggling. I'd spent 4 years building something elegant and complex, documenting it in ways that made sense if you understood the whole system, but were incomprehensible if you tried to reverse engineer it piece by piece. 2 weeks after my resignation, Harrison from legal called from his personal phone at 9:12 p.m. Lena, it's Harrison. Off the record, I've been reviewing some old contracts. That clause 7.4b you mentioned. We need to talk. I'm no longer a Grayson employee. Harrison. I know, but... He paused, and I could hear him choosing his words carefully. Did you retain personal legal counsel before resigning? Why would I need legal counsel for a simple resignation? Another pause. No reason, just, if you did, that would be prudent. He knew, or at least, he suspected. The old lawyer had done his homework, found the clause, understood its implications, but it was too late for warnings. The contracts were signed, the promises made, the demonstrations scheduled. I gave it another week, 3 weeks of silence total, long enough for them to feel secure, to believe I'd simply given up, crawled away to lick my wounds, long enough for the contractors to make changes to the code, to add their patches and modifications, to integrate everything with the federal systems for the upcoming demo. Long enough for them to forget that in the technology world, the person who writes the foundation controls the building, no matter who claims to own the land. On my last evening of waiting, I stood at my window, looking out at the Grayson Dynamics tower in the distance, its lights blazing against the night sky. Tomorrow, they would begin the federal demonstration phase. Tomorrow, $92 million would be on the line. Tomorrow, they would learn that when you call someone weak, you better make sure they don't hold the keys to your kingdom. I opened my laptop one more time, checked the authentication system, all green lights, everything exactly where it should be. I didn't need to do anything more. No dramatic hacking, no sabotage, no illegal actions. Just wait for them to try to deploy my algorithms at scale, and let Clause 7.4b do what legal clauses do best: enforce ownership. They thought my silence was surrender. They were about to learn it was the calm before the storm. The demonstration was scheduled for 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I knew because Amy had texted me the night before. Big demo tomorrow. Wish you were here. The contractors are nervous. I made myself breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee, and settled in front of my laptop at 9:55 a.m. I didn't have access to Grayson's systems anymore, but I didn't need it. The authentication trigger I'd embedded would log to a public blockchain. Completely legal, completely transparent. I would know the moment they tried to deploy. 10:03 a.m., first ping. They were initializing the system. 10:07 a.m., second ping, loading the core algorithms. 10:11 a.m., the cascade began. My phone exploded with notifications. Not calls this time. Panic texts from former colleagues. LinkedIn messages from contractors. Even a Twitter DM from someone in tech journalism who'd somehow already heard something was wrong. Amy's text came through at 10:14 a.m. Everything is locked. What is happening? I pulled up the public blockchain record. There it was, beautiful in its simplicity. System alert. Deployment attempted at scale. Author signature required per Clause 7.4b. Algorithm suite locked pending authorization from Lena Wyatt. This is a legal notification, not a system error. The message would be displaying on every screen in the demonstration room, in front of the Pentagon officials, in front of the senators, in front of the lobbyists who'd invested millions in Evelyn's influence campaign. My name, bright and undeniable, on every monitor. My phone rang. Marcus. I let it ring. Then Harrison. Then the CTO. Then numbers I didn't recognize. Probably the contractors. Maybe even federal officials. At 10:32 a.m., I finally answered Harrison's fifth call. Lena. His voice was strained. Careful. We have a situation. I'm aware. The entire federal demonstration has been suspended. The Pentagon is asking questions. The investors are... He paused. Can you come in? Immediately? I'm no longer an employee. Harrison. As a consultant, then, name your rate. I don't think you understand, I said, keeping my voice calm. This isn't a bug to be fixed. This is a legal notification. The system is working exactly as designed, enforcing the ownership clause that's been in your contracts for 7 years. Silence, then. You knew. When you asked about Clause 7.4b, you already knew. I wrote those algorithms. Harrison, every core function that makes the AI valuable, and according to your own contracts, I retain ownership. You can't deploy them without my explicit written consent. The federal contract is for technology Grayson Dynamics doesn't actually have the right to sell. I heard him cover the phone, muffled voices in the background. Marcus's voice, sharp and angry. Evelyn's, higher, panicked. When Harrison came back, his tone had shifted from legal to human. Lena, please, this will destroy the company. No, I corrected. This will destroy a $92 million contract that was built on ignoring security protocols and dismissing the person who actually built the technology. The company will survive. The stock might take a hit. Some executives might need to find new jobs, but Grayson Dynamics will continue. What do you want? The question everyone always gets to. Eventually, what does the person with power want from those who thought they were powerless? I want the truth to be acknowledged, publicly. I want every investor, every federal official, every employee to know that Evelyn Sharp pushed to bypass critical security measures that would have protected national defense infrastructure. I want them to know that Marcus approved it, and I want them to know that the weak engineer they dismissed was the only thing standing between them and a catastrophic security breach. That would end their careers. Yes. More muffled conversation. Then a new voice, Marcus himself. Lena, no more false warmth, just cold fury. This is extortion. No, Marcus, Extortion would be if I threatened to do something illegal. I'm simply enforcing a legal contract that your team overlooked. The same way Evelyn enforced her influence when she called me weak. The same way you enforced your power when you smiled at her assessment. We'll sue you into oblivion. With what grounds? I'm following the letter of the law. Your own contracts, your own legal framework. Check with Harrison. He'll confirm every word. I heard Harrison's voice in the background, probably explaining the legal reality. The phone went quiet for a long moment. Then Evelyn's voice, closer to breaking than I'd ever heard it. You planned this, from the beginning. No, I said. I planned this from the moment you told me to accept my place. You showed me exactly where the power really was. Not in boardrooms or cocktail parties, but in the code itself, in the thing you all desperately needed but never bothered to understand. The demo is ruined. The Pentagon is walking out. 3 years of work. 3 years of your work, I interrupted. 12 years of mine, and you called it weak. The blockchain logged another attempt to override the lock. Failed. They were trying everything. Probably had every contractor and emergency consultant they could find attempting to break through. But you can't break math. You can't influence an algorithm. You can't lobby a legal clause. At 11:47 a.m., the public logs showed system shutdown. They'd given up, at least for now. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Major technical failure halts Grayson Dynamics federal AI demonstration. Then another. Pentagon reconsidering AI infrastructure contract after deployment disaster. And finally, from a tech blog that always got the inside story. Sources. Authentication lock names former chief engineer as legal owner of Core Technology. The $92 million lobby was collapsing. One headline at a time, the legal assault began at 6 a.m. the next morning. Process servers at my door. Papers thick as a phone book. Cease and desist. Emergency injunction. Breach of fiduciary duty. Corporate sabotage. They'd thrown everything at the wall, hoping something would stick. My lawyer, Sandra Reeves, had been expecting this. I'd retained her the day after finding Clause 7.4b, paying her retainer from my savings. She was everything Harrison Brooks wasn't. Young, aggressive, and specialized in intellectual property warfare. They're panicking, she said over the phone at 7:15 a.m., already reviewing the filings. Half of these claims are nonsense. The other half actually strengthen our position. By noon, she'd filed our response, not defensive, offensive, a formal notification to the Federal Procurement Office, the Pentagon, and the Congressional Oversight Committee. Every document meticulously outlined how Grayson Dynamics had attempted to deploy technology they didn't own, how they'd bypassed critical security protocols, and how they'd misrepresented their assets in federal contract negotiations. The key phrase that would haunt them: fraudulent representation of intellectual property ownership. At 2 p.m., Harrison Brooks called personally. Your lawyer just declared war, Lena. Grayson declared war when they filed 6 different lawsuits this morning. Those can be withdrawn. We can negotiate. Then negotiate with my lawyer. He sighed. Off the record, I warned them. After you left, I spent 3 days reviewing every contract, every clause. I told Marcus and Evelyn that you had legitimate ownership claims. They didn't want to hear it. And now? Now the Pentagon is demanding a full audit. The investors are threatening to pull out. The board is meeting an emergency session tomorrow morning. What about Evelyn's lobby fund? A pause. Frozen. The investment partners want to know how a $92 million deal collapsed because of a single employee they'd never heard of. An employee who was characterized as weak and replaceable in official communications. There it was. The word weak was now part of the legal record. Evidence of their miscalculation. That evening, the Wall Street Journal picked up the story. Grayson Dynamics federal contract in jeopardy over IP dispute. The article mentioned Clause 7.4b, the failed demonstration, and crucially, quoted an anonymous Pentagon source. We're reconsidering all technology partnerships that show this level of internal dysfunction. At 9:23 p.m., I received an encrypted email from someone at the Federal Procurement Office. Ms. Wyatt, your notification has been received and is under review. We take allegations of fraudulent representation extremely seriously. We note that you are listed as the primary author on 17 critical patents related to the technology in question. We also note that Grayson Dynamics claimed full ownership of these patents in their proposal. A formal investigation will begin Monday. Your cooperation would be appreciated. Regards, Deputy Director of Procurement Integrity. Sandra called immediately. This is big. Lena, if the feds find fraud, it's not just the contract. It's criminal charges. Executives go to prison for this. I know. Are you prepared for that? For Marcus and Evelyn to potentially face criminal prosecution? I thought about Evelyn's manicured hand on my arm, her whispered threats dressed as advice. I thought about Marcus's thin smile as she called me weak. I thought about 12 years of building something extraordinary, only to be dismissed as a replaceable cog. I'm not trying to send anyone to prison, I said. I just want what's mine, and I want the truth acknowledged. Then we need to give them an exit strategy, a way to save face while giving you what you deserve. At 11:45 p.m., another call from Harrison. The board wants to meet with you tomorrow, 8 a.m. Just you, no lawyers. They're prepared to discuss terms. Terms for what? For saving this company from complete destruction. Lena, the stock has dropped 30% in after-hours trading. If the federal investigation becomes public, we're looking at a 50% drop minimum. Thousands of employees will lose their jobs. Retirement funds will evaporate. None of that is my responsibility. Harrison, I tried to warn about the security vulnerabilities. I tried to maintain protocols. I was overruled and humiliated. I know. I know. But you're holding all the cards now. The board knows it. Marcus knows it. Even Evelyn knows it. What are you asking me to do? Come to the meeting. Hear them out. You have all the power here. What harm could listening do? He was right about one thing. I did have all the power. The algorithms couldn't run without my authorization. The federal contract was dead without the technology. And now, with potential fraud charges looming, even their freedom depended on my cooperation. The weak engineer, the one who lacked leadership qualities, the one who should have accepted her place, she now held the fate of a multi-billion-dollar company in her hands. I'll be there, I said. 8 a.m. sharp. I hung up and looked out at the city lights. Tomorrow. I would walk back into that building I'd left in silence 3 weeks ago, but this time, I wouldn't be the one being judged. The hunter had become the hunted, and they were about to learn that when you corner what you think is prey, sometimes you discover you were the prey all along. The boardroom at 7:58 a.m. looked like a funeral parlor. 12 executives around the Italian marble table, their faces ranging from exhausted to furious. Marcus sat at the head, his usual commanding presence diminished to something hollow. Evelyn was 3 seats down, her perfect facade cracked, smudged mascara, wrinkled designer suit, hands that wouldn't stop trembling. I entered at exactly 8 a.m., carrying only my laptop and a leather portfolio. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, the same black suit I'd worn to my first interview at Grayson, but now paired with red heels that clicked against the floor like a countdown. Lena, the chairman of the board, Richard Steinberg, stood, 70 years old, built Grayson from nothing, the only person in the room with more power than Marcus. Thank you for coming. I took the seat they'd left open, directly across from Evelyn. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second before she looked away. Sandra had insisted on waiting in the lobby despite their no lawyers rule. If you need me, just text 911, she'd said. But I wouldn't need her, not for this. Richard cleared his throat. We'll skip the pleasantries. The federal contract is suspended. The Pentagon is conducting a fraud investigation. Our stock has crashed 37%. 3 major investors have initiated withdrawal procedures. And at the center of it all is Clause 7.4b, and your name on every algorithm that matters. He pushed a document across the table. This is our offer. I didn't touch it. Tell me what it says. Marcus's jaw clenched, but Richard continued. Full ownership recognition of your algorithms. 22 million in cash compensation for past use. 15% equity stake in any future deployment. Public acknowledgement of your contributions. In exchange, you authorize immediate use for the federal contract and agree to a non-disclosure about recent events. No. The word hung in the air like a blade. No? Marcus finally spoke, his voice cracking. That's more than fair. You're asking me to save you, I interrupted, to authorize the deployment so you can salvage the federal contract, to stay quiet about the security vulnerabilities Evelyn pushed through, to let you rewrite history where this was all just an unfortunate misunderstanding. What do you want? Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. I opened my portfolio and pulled out a single sheet of paper, sliding it to Richard. My terms, non-negotiable. He read aloud. 35 million immediate cash payment, 25% equity in all AI deployments. But most importantly, he paused, looking up at me. Full public disclosure of security vulnerability bypass attempts, with names attached. That's career suicide, Marcus said. Yes. You're asking us to destroy ourselves. No. I'm asking you to tell the truth. That Evelyn Sharp, in her role as strategic consultant, pushed to bypass 17 critical security protocols that would have protected national infrastructure. That Marcus Hale approved these bypasses despite repeated warnings from the chief security systems engineer. That you were willing to risk national security for a $92 million contract. The company will never recover, Richard said quietly. The company will recover fine once the cancer is removed. I looked directly at Marcus, then Evelyn. You two are the cancer. Evelyn stood abruptly. You bitter, vindictive... Weak? I supplied. Is that the word you're looking for? Because 3 weeks ago, in this very room, that's what you called me. You said I lacked leadership qualities, that I should accept my place, that people like me keep companies running but never make the decisions that matter. I stood too, matching her stance. You were right about one thing. I did keep this company running, every system, every protocol, every line of code that made Grayson valuable. I built it, and you dismissed me as weak because I didn't play your power games, because I worked in reality while you worked in influence. Sit down, both of you, Richard commanded. We sat. He studied my terms again, then looked at the rest of the board. We need to vote. Vote? Marcus stood. This is extortion. This is consequence, Richard cut him off. Something you've both avoided for too long. I've seen the communications. I've seen the emails where you called Lena weak, where you marginalized her contributions, where you ignored her warnings, and now she holds the keys to everything. He turned to the board. All in favor of accepting Ms. Wyatt's terms? One by one, hands rose. 8 out of 12. Motion passes. Marcus's face went white. You can't. I can, and I just did. You're terminated. Effective immediately. Evelyn, your consulting contract is void. Security will escort you both out. Evelyn looked at me with pure hatred. You've ruined everything. 3 years of work, relationships, influence. Your 3 years of work, I said calmly, built on my 12 years of code. You played with power. I built with logic. Guess which one holds up in court? Security arrived. 2 guards who'd always been friendly to me during my late nights. They looked uncomfortable but determined. As they led Marcus and Evelyn out, Evelyn turned one last time. This won't change anything. You're still just an engineer. You'll never be one of us. You're right, I said. I'll never be someone who risks national security for money. I'll never be someone who builds power on humiliation. I'll never be someone who confuses influence with value. I looked her in the eye. I'll never be weak like you. The door closed behind them. The room sat in silence for a moment before Richard spoke. Ms. Wyatt, we accept your terms. The payment will be wired by end of business today. The public disclosure will go out Monday morning, and the federal contract will need to be renegotiated with proper security protocols in place. I'll provide a list of requirements. You'll consult for us? At my rate, with full autonomy over security decisions.
He nodded. Welcome back, Lena. Though I suppose you never really left.
I signed the authorization, watching my name flow across the paper. The same signature that had been worthless 3 weeks ago, now worth $35 million, and the truth. The algorithms unlocked immediately. The system hummed back to life. Somewhere in the building, engineers were probably cheering. But I wasn't done yet. The 30th floor of the Grayson building had the best view of Manhattan. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows at 5:43 p.m., watching the city transform as evening approached. The same view from the executive conference room where Evelyn had called me weak. But now I was alone, and the silence felt like victory. Below, they were removing the banners from the failed AI demonstration. Giant vinyl sheets promoting the future of defense technology, being rolled up and carted away like yesterday's news. The $92 million dream, deflated and packed into trucks. My phone buzzed. A news alert from TechCrunch. Grayson Dynamics admits to security protocol failures. CEO and strategic consultant terminated. The story was everywhere within minutes. Wall Street Journal, Forbes, even the Washington Post. Each article mentioned my name, not as the weak engineer who'd been dismissed, but as the architect who'd built something so valuable that the company couldn't function without it. Amy found me there, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might want this," she said, handing me one. "The engineering team wanted me to tell you something." "What's that?" "We never thought you were weak. We knew exactly who built this place." I smiled, taking a sip. It was never about what the team thought. It was about what the people in power believed they could take from us. So what happens now? You're rich. You've got your revenge. You could go anywhere, do anything. I turned from the window. The federal contract will be renegotiated, this time with proper security protocols. Real protections, the kind that actually matter for national defense, not just the kind that look good in PowerPoint presentations. You're staying? As a consultant, on my terms, with veto power over any security decision. I paused. Evelyn was wrong about one thing and right about another. She was wrong that I was weak, but she was right that people like me keep companies running. The difference is, now they know it too. Amy laughed. She must be losing her mind right now. Last I heard, her lobbying firm dropped her. Turns out, influence without infrastructure is just expensive talk. And Marcus? No tech company will touch him after the federal investigation details come out. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to twinkle, the same lights I'd stared at from the parking garage that night, feeling humiliated and small. Now they looked different, not like distant stars I could never reach, but like a constellation I'd helped wire. "You know what the ironic part is?" I said. "If they'd just treated me with respect, none of this would have happened. I would have happily built their empire, secured their systems, made their AI dreams reality. All they had to do was not call me weak." "Pride goeth before the fall," Amy quoted. "No," I corrected. "Pride goeth before you realize the person you stepped on was holding up the entire building." My phone buzzed again, the wire transfer confirmation. $35 million. Numbers on a screen that represented 12 years of being underestimated, overlooked, dismissed. But it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about the principle burned into every line of code I'd ever written. In a world of variables and conditions, truth is binary. Either something is true or it's false. Either you own something or you don't. Either you have power or you're at the mercy of those who do. They'd thought power was about connections, influence, the ability to shape perception. But real power? Real power was understanding how things actually work. The unglamorous knowledge of systems and protocols and boring legal clauses that everyone skims past. Richard Steinberg appeared in the doorway. "Lena, the board wanted me to tell you something." "What's that?" "We're promoting you, not to management. We know that's not what you want. But to a new position, Chief Technology Architect, reporting directly to the board. with complete autonomy over all core systems. That position doesn't exist. It does now. We're done underestimating the people who actually build things. I nodded. I'll think about it. He left, and I turned back to the window. Somewhere out there, Evelyn was probably in her apartment, making calls to contacts who no longer answered. Marcus was probably consulting with lawyers, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. They'd played the game the way they'd been taught, with charm and connections and carefully managed perceptions. But they'd forgotten the first rule of technology. The machine doesn't care about your influence. It only cares about the code. And I had written the code. The sun set completely, leaving only the artificial lights of the city, each building a server, each light a process running, the whole city a massive system humming with electricity and ambition. I stood there, 34 years old, no longer the weak engineer but the architect of my own revenge. They'd laughed behind my back, called me weak, thought their penthouse dinners and $92 million lobbies made them untouchable. They were wrong. I finished my coffee, set down the empty cup, and walked away from the window. There was code to review, systems to secure, and a company to rebuild properly this time. The weak engineer was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that true power isn't loud or flashy, or draped in designer suits. True power is quiet, patient, and precise. True power writes the code that makes everything else possible. And then, when necessary, it rewrites the rules entirely. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate revenge and justice. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Lena's position? Your perspectives make these stories come alive.